Hi everyone, this is Peter Ong of Rest Age Advisory. Welcome to episode 8 of Opportunities Unusual. Today we cover a topic which is the anchor stone of our entire series. How can we learn, apply and master change management successfully? As we commence our topic, let me start by asking you some questions. Do you wear a watch? And if you do wear a watch, is it a quartz watch, a mechanical watch like this, or a smart watch? And if you don't wear a watch, what do you use to tell time? And if you do wear a watch and buy watches, do you collect them? All your answers to these questions across the entire world will determine how the watch industry kind of evolves. In 1969, a company called Seiko released the first ever commercial quartz watch. It was called the Astron, and when it was launched, only 200 pieces were produced for the Japanese market, and the price of the Astron in 1969, the first commercial quartz watch, was the price of a mid-size car, brand new, like a Toyota Corolla. Fast forward, in 1970 to 1988, the Swiss watch industry experienced a crisis. In fact, it was called the quartz crisis. 90,000 people used to work as watchmaker or watchmaker related jobs in Switzerland. By the time it hit 1988, there were only 28,000 people doing those jobs. In fact, in 1983, it became so crucial for the Swiss watch industry that they created Swatch watch. Swiss watch, S-watch, Swatch. They created Swatch to compete with the quartz market that was now being very dominant in the 1970s and the 1980s by three brands called Seiko, Casio, and Citizen. What I'm trying to illustrate here is that sometimes through no fault of yours, through no fault of your company, global trends simply change and consumer behavior, buying patterns simply change, and you have to change along to be able to survive, to be able to thrive. Think about the cassette shops, think about the CD shops, think about the DVD shops in the countries where you live. Chances are they are now hobbyist shops selling vinyls, selling rare collector items, because the whole industry has disappeared with online, on-demand streaming services like Spotify and Netflix. So sometimes we have to change, not because of any fault of our own, but because the global trends, consumer behavior patterns have simply changed. This represents my call to action part of today's topic. Let me continue on a little bit more. How old is your company? Is your company more than 15 years old? Do you know that most companies in the world last no more than 15 years? And that if you look at companies that have existed more than 200 years, the number will surprise you. Across the entire world, there's only about 5,500 companies that have lasted more than 2 centuries. Simply put, if you want your company to go beyond 15 years, go a quarter a century, go 200 years, then change management is a discipline, is a focused discipline that your leaders, your middle managers, and your associates must embrace and must do well, such that your company continues to chart its way forward stronger and stronger. Assuming that you are now sold, that you have bought the call to action, COVID-19 is a hard wake-up call, you need to shift your business model, you need to transform, you need to learn change management. The Swiss watch industry example that I shared with you, the CD shops and the DVD shops going out of business, those examples that I shared with you have compelled you that you want to learn change management, you want to apply it, and you want to master change management in your company. What can you do? Let me offer today's sharing now in 3 parts. In part 1, we will learn what is change management. In part 2, I'll share with you Resta Age Advisory's 9 E's model to change management, which many of my clients and friends use and which they like very much because they help prevent any blind spots for change management. And finally, to close off today's video, I'll share with you 3 critical success factors that will matter for you as you embark on change management in this exact day and age. Let's start with part 1. What is change management? Let me start with the painful part of change management. The most painful part of change management happens when it's unplanned. A little bit like the first arrow of COVID-19, if your company is not already in a digitized manner, having a digitized business model somewhat, you will feel hit really hard and it's really painful for you because this change is sudden, it is unplanned. It is the same type of change as if you were a company that is forcefully acquired by some other larger party. Unplanned change, in my experience, is the hardest for leaders, middle managers, and associates to deal with because there's an element of uncertainty and there's a big element of my boat is suddenly being rocked and I may not be in a very favorable position, not just organizationally, but also individually. You might remember in Singapore, in the mid-1990s to the early 2000s, Singapore had 7 local banks, and through a mix of consolidations, Singapore went on to have 3 local banks now. Those companies, those banks that have been forcefully acquired or have been acquired through planning by the leaders at the top, those unplanned changes are hard to take for many people. So change management hits us the worst when it's unplanned, and of course we can be proactive, we can be intentional, and we can be strategic in planning for change management, and that's what today's 10 to 15 minutes is about. When I go into a company, I usually look at whether they really understand planned change management. Think about these 3 different types of change management. Type A is called developmental change, or this is called incremental change. Every year, you are asked to do more with a little bit less. That is incremental change. It's like someone who is 70 kg wanting to drop to 68 kg. It is seemingly simple. It is likely very doable. So many companies make the mistake of calling incremental or developmental changes transformational, thereby scaring the heck out of all their workforce. If it's developmental change, it's incremental change, you expect that every year for a dual strategy, well-run company. That is business as usual. You just need to build your staff's ability to do dual strategy and to do more with less every year. Incremental change and developmental change is the easiest form of change. The unplanned change, which I've talked about, where a company may be forcefully acquired, or like the COVID-19 hard wake-up call of the first arrow, those are usually called transitional changes. You think about the lockdown. Retail shops have to do social distancing, F&B outlets have to do a lot of deliveries, and if they do get to open, they may have to space people 1.5 meters apart, let's just say. But all these are transitional. Transitional changes usually mean a lot of work, usually means some level of pain. It is usually really difficult to handle. And you need your most skilled change leaders, change masters to lead transitional changes. Now let's go to what people usually associate with change management, which is called transformational changes. Transformational change. When you have a big change to your business model, you might recall that in the last episode, I talked about Netflix. In 1997, they had a business model of DVD rentals by the US Post. In 2007, they did video on demand with non-original content. And in 2011, they won the bid for House of Cards, 26 episodes, to do original content, and they created binge watching by releasing in 2013 all the episodes of season 1 at one go. If you're doing shifts like that, like Netflix, that is what is called transformational change. That is usually what you need to be most structured, most planful, most intentional, most strategic, and most proactive about. Companies, do you know that up to 75% of companies have experienced failed change management initiatives? So if you feel that, hey, Pete, I tried it many times and I failed, well, you do belong to the majority. It is actually the minority that have not experienced any failed change management initiatives. Now let me go to part 2. Part 2 is where we talk about the 9 E's model for change management, which is a rested age advisory model which you can embrace in any form that you like. The first E, envision. If you recall episode 7, how to evolve and transform your business model, I have spoken on envision part a fair bit, so I'm going to kind of glide over this, other than to say that most times, if you think about IQ, EQ, and SQ being social intelligence, let's say the IQ part is the most needed in the envisioning portion. So a lot of leaders, because they are well educated, they are well schooled, they have strong cognitive capacities, they can envision and have a paper output that is ready for everyone to embark on. And traditionally, the biggest mistake is then to go to your people and say that now that we have a vision in place, let us go and execute it, and just ask your team members to execute it. If you do this, you will miss 5 important steps, 5 E's in the rested age 9 E's model. Let me tell you more. The envision part must be followed by an enlisting stage. John P. Cotter, famous professor in Harvard Business School, had mentioned quite a few times that 3/4 of your senior team, 3/4 of your core teams, 3/4 of your organization must support the change in order for it to succeed. Having been a practitioner, an advisor, a business consultant in this area for more than 25 years, I see this to be really, really true. So you want to enlist at least 3/4 of your company, 3/4 of your core team, 3/4 of your senior management team to be with you, seeing the same vision that you see. To see the same vision that you see, to enlist people, you need to learn a few things. This is actually a very difficult part of the 9 E's model. You need to create some level of dissatisfaction with the status quo and a strong sense of belief that we can overcome this dissatisfaction and we can evolve a stronger, better business model that will be more gangbusters and be stronger and helping us have our best years ahead, not behind us. So there's some level of dissatisfaction with the status quo, with the current you need to create. There's some level of inspiration and motivation you need to give. And then, irregardless how your employees, how your core team members, how your senior team bring resistance back to your ears, you must listen without judgment and you must celebrate resistance. Celebrate resistance rather than thumbing it down, where we call it demonized resistance. When you celebrate resistance and you ask your team members, how could I best support you for success? Is there one or two things I could help you think around with, that I could help provide, that will help you bring your entire teams on board this new vision? You must celebrate resistance so that people will articulate their heartfelt feelings, and then in your ability to provide resources, confidence, and skill sets, you give your people the confidence to see the future jointly with you. The dream stage has envision, enlist. It has one more E called enable. Nobody wants to fail in a change management endeavor. Be they the leader running it, be they the project leaders supporting the leaders, be they what you call change agents, or the recipients of change called change targets. Nobody wants to fail in change management. Therefore, we must enable your core teams, your senior team, your entire enterprise to succeed. Put natural teams into a classroom or virtual kind of session like this. Help them learn the change management landscape. Help them learn what you have learned. Help them learn the change management lingo. Help them learn dual strategy. Help them learn all these important things. Give them the skill sets and the habits and the behaviors for success. So the first 3E in Rester H 9E model is to envision, it is to enlist, and it is to enable. This constitutes what I would call the dream portion. If the dream portion is beautifully completed, you are now ready to amp up the drive portion. In the drive portion, there are 3 E's that I kind of stack them vertically down. I call them engage your people, energize your people, and empower your people. Notice that empower only comes at this stage. If you empower your people too early, before they are enlisted and before they are enabled, they will feel more fear and you will get more resistance because they do not know how to make the decisions. They do not know how to shape the project. They do not know how to scope the project. They do not know how to handle resistance. So engage, energize, and empower is where usually the whole entire change navigation structure gets pulled together. You have leaders at the top managing groups of projects. I like to call them stream leaders. They are leaders managing various streams of projects. Then right at the top is you as the leader keeping a clear eye on the changes and the big transformational changes ahead. So at each stream, you will be grouping related projects. So you could imagine a digitization project, perhaps with an AI, artificial intelligence project leading up into the same stream. You may have a business model project with a customer relationship management project leading up to the same stream. When you have all the streams nicely mapped out, your key leaders clearly articulated and developed and ready for success, this is where your entire landscape, change leaders, change masters, change agents, change recipients are all beautifully laid out. This is the part where everybody's drive is at its highest, and this is the drive stage. We engage, we energize, we empower. The next step now comes in execute. Execute could actually be taken as all the previous stages taken together. You've executed the dual strategy, the business model, you executed bringing people on board, and now you are at the stage where you will see the tangible results. Project outputs in the execution stage will progressively get delivered. And many projects output will create a project outcome. So if your company wants to shift from traditional bricks and mortar to fully digitize, there's many outputs will give the outcome that you want. And the outcome could be achieved only 2-3 years down the road, where you have a lot of customers who are now digitized. You change their customers' behavior. You change the entire marketing to fulfillment behavior of your company that is now primarily in a digitized mode. So the goals are scored in the execution box. And it is only when your company proceeds all the way to the execution box that you have achieved what you have put in the transformation for. There are 2 more E's behind this part, which I call it the do part. So let me recap for you first, in case you forget. It's a 9 E's model. Dream stage, envision, enlist, enable. Drive stage, engage, energize, empower. Do stage, execute, evaluate, embed. Many organizations, they may have done many dream or many change management projects, but they still are at first principles each time they do a change management project. And that's wrong. Your company doesn't get stronger that way. You need to learn, you need to apply, you need to master, and you need to expand the skill sets of change management across your company. And you do that in the evaluation, what works for us, what doesn't work for us, what can we improve further, what have we learned, how could we propagate this across the local scene, the regional scene, and our global enterprise. You must learn, apply, master, expand your capabilities, and then retain the core talent that you have. And you do that through the evaluation and the embed stage. So very quickly, I have shared with you the 9Es model to change management. You must note at this stage that change management is a long, laborious process, and we must celebrate small successes along the way. And along the way, because change management has to be done across all the divisions in your company, you must encourage tight, cohesive, aligned teams that are non-confrontational and are very collaborative. When you break down the silos and you have that, change management can flourish within your entire company. I hope I didn't go too long in talking about the 9Es model. It is a model that if you apply it rather diligently, it will give you change management success. So why do companies embark on change? And let me close off today's video with the 2 reasons companies embark on change, if you haven't figured out already. The first is to ensure your survival. Whether you are like the Swiss watch industry in the 1970s to the 1980s, creating the Swatch Group to compete head-on with the Japanese and the Asian watchmakers. And Swatch, do you know, is the largest selling quartz watch group in the entire world. So Swatch, in a way, has succeeded. So one reason for change, whether you be the CD shop changing its business model, is always for survival. You don't want to pray every quarter and say, give me another quarter, knowing back in your mind that your people, your product, your customer segments, you're no longer reaching them as best as you could. The other reason for change, what Amazon does, what Facebook does, what Netflix does, what Apple does, is to change at the highest strength of your organization and to create a new business model to disrupt yourself because you are the leading player in the industry. We change to thrive. So we change either to survive or to thrive. It could be a mix of both, but there are only 2 reasons for change. There's a lot of critical success factors that you can read about change in the market. Let me give you 3, which I think are the most making sense in this time and day. The first is you want your leaders to be aligned and you want them to be open-minded, aligned with each other, aligned with you, and yet open-minded and learning every single day, listening to resistance with no defensive knee-jerk reactions. Then the entire company, let's use a term called followers. You have core team followers, you have associate followers, you have middle managers followers. The entire organization of people, you want competent, collaborative followers across your entire enterprise. So I put that as critical success factor number 2. Finally, something binds the leaders and the followers together, and that's called culture. I think you want a nimble, innovative culture. So these are my 3 heartfelt critical success factors for you as you, the leader, embark with your company on your change management journey. Let me end off with 2 thoughts for you, and then I'll whet your appetite on what next week's topic would be. Change management, for those who attended my classes, I've always said it's not an art. You can't do it willy-nilly and expect sometimes to succeed, sometimes to fail, some people to like, some people not to like. I don't think it's also like a science, although you can learn it as a science. Science would suggest that every time we do something like this, we will get a similar outcome, a similar result. But because of the permutations and the variations of cultures, country-related, company-related, because of the differences in leaders, middle managers, associates, and the culture that each of us have. Change management is a craft. We need to treat every activity, every step. If you buy into the 9 E's model, you need to treat every E seriously, such that your dream, your drive, and your do stage, each encompassing 3 E's, can be beautifully put in. And you get better each time, your people get better each time. So if we embark on a craftsman model, then we can do change better. In 1970, a futurist I like called Alvin Toffler wrote a book called Future Shock. In Future Shock, he mentioned a phrase which is now widely quoted. Let me quote it for you. The illiterate of the 21st century is not someone who cannot read or write. It is someone who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. If you, the business leader, you, the owner-operator, can learn, unlearn, and relearn the right practices for your company in change management, I think it's reasonable to ask your senior team, your middle managers, and your associates to do the same. Because if your company wants to go beyond 15 years, most companies don't go beyond 15 years. You want the very best years of your company ahead, not behind it. This is something your company must learn, must apply, and must master. In next week's topic, let me whet your appetite, which we will come to the end or the conclusion episode of our 9-part Opportunities Unusual series. I will talk about how to digitize smartly and successfully. In the last 2 or 3 months, it is horrifying to me to see many companies and sometimes enabling agencies jumping in willy-nilly into the digitization space. Digitization space, if we create an access channel, doesn't really mean that we will succeed. It's just like if you have a shop front in a shopping mall, you have an access channel, doesn't mean that you will succeed. If you send out an electronic direct mailer, you know how to do that, doesn't mean that you will succeed. We must digitize smartly and we must digitize successfully because the whole world is going digitization. The whole world is doing digital transformation. So we must be able to digitize smartly and successfully. And do join me for the concluding episode of our Opportunities Unusual series. So this is Peter Ong. I hope you enjoy today's series, today's episode. If it is good for you and you like it, please do share it so that more of your fellow friends and business owners can benefit. Thank you so much. See you next week. Bye-bye.